Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hello, and welcome to the day before. That which we've been waiting for is almost upon us, and as a result, we are joined today by City Paper's chief political reporter. Well, you are.
Sure.
Yeah, it's his beat. This is Ryan Dito, and he put together the City Paper's election edition, which has all if you haven't seen it, pick it up. There's lots of interesting factoids in there, and also things like what is possibly going to happen if either Democrats win or if and we're looking at, we're not looking nationally, we're looking closer to home and at the state. So the reality is that even if there's a blue wave, it ain't a big enough wave to get Harrisburg or the state legislature back.
No, there's a chance that the state house could flip. It's a slim chance.
Yeah.
It's very slim. Allegheny County would probably have to factor in hugely into that, like maybe flipping like 4 or 5 state house seats within the county.
Name some names that would have to be flipped.
Mike Terzai's seat.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, well, Mike Terzai, for those of you
probably the most
who don't,
important.
He is, and I want to talk a lot about him. Mike Terzai is a very powerful man.
He's basically the state's Paul Ryan, if that's a good comparison for people to understand.
Yeah.
Is that he controls
the Speaker of the House.
Yes, and he has just as much clout as Ryan does in the national government as
he does at the state level.
Yes,
and
at the state level.
Because he sets the agenda of what is possible.
Absolutely.
He controls if a bill is put forward, he controls its path. What committee it is assigned to. He can
decide whether or not even to bring it up after committee, and
if it even has a vote.
If it goes through committee, he can decide almost unilaterally that whether or not it can get to a vote, so that all of the 100-something members of the Pennsylvania State House can vote on it. And it's the same way that the former Speaker of the House in the U.S. U.S. federal government, John Boehner, wouldn't allow a immigration bill that went through the Senate. Right. And now we're kind of stuck with this immigration system that the president has been demonizing. So he has that power on the state level, and it's not the same policies that we see, but it is really important policies like gun control, like LGBT rights, like marijuana, like
gerrymandering.
Absolutely, gerrymandering. Yeah,
like retooling the size of the state legislature, like right?
Everything, taxes.
So to say he is as powerful as the governor is not. You could argue that in that if we have equal branches of government, he sits atop one of them.
Yes, and and I would argue he's very close to power as the governor. The governor's power over Terzai is that the governor has a veto. Exactly.
That's it. He's got one
but
shot.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. But the governor, just like normally, typically stays out of how bills legislate through the assembly. So Terzai doesn't. Terzai is actively in that, so he can shape bills, and he's done that many, many times. He's tried to shape bills. He tried to include a Down syndrome abortion restriction into a bill about something not even related to that. I can't even remember what it was. But that's what the issue is, and that's what I hope like Pennsylvania voters, when they go to the polls, really think about, because there's all this talk about the blue wave and the House flipping and Trump for some reason, even though he's not on the ballot, and all this other stuff. But like, your state government is extremely important. There's so many bills that the federal government doesn't even take up because it's the norm to give that responsibility to the state. Exactly.
And what I've always been told, the closer the political entity is to you, the more impact it has on your life. So that city government has extraordinary, it sets the tax rate, your property taxes. The state government has more impact on your life.
Yeah, I would argue. You could argue it has the most. You could argue it has the most impact because of the because of the policies.
And we pay so little attention.
Yes.
Okay, so Mike Turzai, he's from Marshall. I don't even know where Marshall is.
Yeah, it's in the North Hills.
Right.
It's right. It's right on the. It's like one of the northernmost townships in Allegheny County. It's right off 279, basically, like right before Cranberry.
God, there are more bad people. Excuse me. In our legislature from the North Hills, you guys save us. Jeez.
Yeah, the North Hills does have a
Daryl Metcalf.
Yes, Daryl Metcalf is another very.
Any shot that we can bring him down?
So I haven't seen any polling on that race. It'd be hard because the Republicans outnumber the Democrats
even in registration.
Much so. In that area, it's a Republican stronghold. Dan Smith Jr. has run a very compelling campaign. I would say he's very much focused on. Roads and local issues, and I've actually spent a lot of time in Cranberry. I used to live near around there, and it is a big issue for people there. It's fastest growing area in the whole region, and they have a lot of traffic issues because they haven't gotten the state funds to expand some of their roadways, Freedom Road, and Dan has really focused on that. Well, Daryl Metcalf has done exactly what he always does, which is try to be a demagogue about anti-gay, anti-LGBT, anti-immigrant, really anti-anything.
Smith is gay?
Smith is openly gay. Yeah. Actually, we actually broke the story about him running for the State House. I can't remember exactly when I wrote that, but it was a while ago.
He's running against the most just flat-out homophobe, unrepentant, bold homophobe in the State House.
At this point, I don't even think anybody needs to pretend like that's not the case because he just put out a mailer that said that claim that Dan Smith was married to quote unquote a husband, like in quotes, even though the Supreme Court has recognized that since 2015, and I think Pennsylvania slightly before that. So, that's one of those things. That one's I don't think that one's gonna flip, but there are a lot of other ones. Hal English retired right next to Turzai's district, and so that's like an open seat with a Democrat running. Michelle Knoll is running against Valerie Gatos, which is also an open seat. There were a lot of Republican state house retirements, basically. John Maher down in, or Mayor, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, down in Upper St. Clair. He retired as well. Eli Ivankovich retired. That's like Westmoreland County and also Allegheny County. And so there are a lot of possibilities for pickup seats. You never really know. Those places are, typically more Republican.
They're Republican.
So, but if people go out there and they really think about it, they really think about what they really want out of their state representative, maybe Republicans flip because they want to see medical marijuana. I should say recreational marijuana on the ballot and stuff like that.
I saw a yard sign walking my dog this morning, and I live in the East End, and it was for, I thought, what? I looked at it, I thought, huh? It's Turzai's opponent.
Yeah.
Skopik?
Yeah. Her name's Emily Skopov.
Skopov, that's
it. She's been running against Turzai for a very long time.
She's running other elections against him?
No. Just this election, but she got into the campaign extremely early. I think I actually saw her at the Summit Against Racism, like directly after Trump won in 2016, and she was like, "I'm gonna run against Turzai." So
good for her.
So she's been running a very long race, and I was actually just up there yesterday. A famous Hollywood actor, actually. His name's Zachary Quinto. He played
I know
Spock in Star Trek.
Sure.
Yeah, he's from Pittsburgh. He was actually up there with her, canvassing and helping her team
that's fantastic.
get motivated. So that race is a lot closer than people expected it to be. And so if that race goes, then I think there's a really good chance that a few other races can go, and then there's even a bigger chance to flip houses out in the Philly burbs area. So there's a chance. But not the state senate though. That can't. It's basically mathematically impossible. Like to this, or there's like an extremely small percentage chance.
Well, Turzai, let's make no mistake about how conservative he is. I mean, he's just down the line.
Yes, he's very conservative.
And in terms of, I just want to say one of the things that's happening, because I'm a fervent person, supporter of Planned Parenthood, is I think what's going to happen is Roe v. Wade is not necessarily going to be overturned. It's going to be the legs cut out from under them. The Kavanaugh Supreme Court will, when given the opportunity, and that'll be relatively quickly, they will say this is something the states should decide. So it's going to come back to the states.
Yeah.
And if it comes back to the states, Mike Turzai will ensure that abortion will be criminalized in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well,
now,
I can't say for sure that because he hasn't attempted that yet, but at the same time, you can't really attempt it because everybody knows that it would get struck down immediately by the Supreme Court. So, but he has a very, very long and extensive record of attempting severe abortion restrictions within the letter of the law.
That's right.
For a very long time. But not only would Turzai, if he remains in office, would probably push that agenda, would push a very severe restriction abortion agenda, or even possibly making abortion illegal. The Republican candidate for governor, Scott Wagner, has said on the record that he would do that. And so if he's in office, there's no veto there. And so there is a distinct possibility that abortion could be illegal in Pennsylvania because there is no protection in our state constitution where other states have done that. Like California has a protection within their constitution. So the legislator couldn't just willy-nilly change it. They'd have to change the constitution, their state constitution, which is obviously a lot harder.
Okay, well, going to another thing that is not in our constitution in Pennsylvania, there is no legal protection for gays, lesbians,
trans, queers,
all the way down the line.
Yeah.
Which is to say, actually, unless you around here in southwestern Pennsylvania, unless you live in Allegheny County, if you're LGBT, you have no legal. You can be fired from your job. Your landlord can throw you out on the street.
Yeah, this is something I've covered for a long time, and it's actually something that a lot of Pennsylvanians probably don't really know about. They just assume that they do have the same rights. In 1964, the famous Civil Rights Act was passed, which gave civil rights protections, non-discrimination protections, based on gender, based on race, based on religion, based on national origin. And maybe one more, but not based on sexual identity, which would be like whether or not you're gay or straight, and not based on gender identity, which would whether or not you're trans or you were cis, which is not trans. And so in Beaver County, for example, if you move into an apartment in Ambridge, let's say, and the landlord is anti-LGBT or isn't. It doesn't really even matter. They don't
have to be. They just can say you're out.
They can say I'm evicting you, and then you can go, oh, why? Well, because you and your girlfriend live here, or something like that, And so, yes, and
that's legal.
and it is 100% legal. There's nothing they can do. They can also deny you public accommodation. So you could walk into a coffee shop in Beaver, for example, and they can say, oh, no, you're trans, so no, you can't go into the bathroom. And they can legally do that because it is not included in the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And some states have changed their Civil Rights Act to include that. Pennsylvania is not one of those states. So in most of western Pennsylvania, outside of Erie County and Allegheny County, you can be fired, evicted, or denied public accommodation because you're gay. And actually, that's actually true of most of the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
2/3 of the state. It took me forever to find exactly how many, municipalities, because some in southeastern Pennsylvania have passed it by municipality, like how Ross Township did recently, but Ross Township's already within Allegheny County. And it's actually really, really complicated because Butler County, for example, the city of Butler was considering passing one. They, the Democrats lost an election, so they didn't pass it. But in Butler County, you can't even pass it on a county-wide level because they don't have a county-wide police force. So it has to be done either municipality by municipality, which there are thousands in the state, or the state can easily just pass one statewide.
You don't have at the tip of your fingers how many states are like Pennsylvania and not having protection.
Most states.
Most states
yes.
do not have protection.
Yeah, well, I mean, any state where Republicans have been in charge forever, they haven't done it. So you've got to talk about Alabama, Mississippi, Wyoming, all these places.
The red states
don't have red states. Yes, I think some red states might, like one or two, might have some, but no, not to the example that like California, Massachusetts, these other states. Do. So yes, that is a very important issue if you believe in LGBTQ rights, and it is on the ballot 100%.
If you believe in LGBTQ rights, if you believe in human rights,
absolutely.
I mean, it's just human rights.
Yeah,
it's saying that doesn't matter who you are, you have the full protection of the law. To be culling groups of people out and saying this law applies to everybody but you is so extraordinary to me.
It's really remarkable because Republicans who privately, I would say, support these things, they when it comes to legislatively,
they have no courage at all.
They don't. I actually covered the one in Ross Township, and they have 5 Democrats and 3 Republicans on their council, one of whom is actually running for state senate, Jeremy Schaefer. Ugh. He was absent for that vote, obviously. But the 2 Republicans, one of them said, I don't believe in discrimination of any kind. I don't believe in discrimination against religion, against all this stuff. And then he voted against the bill. So it's just like this talking thing that they're so, I don't know. I'm assuming they're really afraid of probably their far right Christian base.
Right.
That would be like, you just okayed a bathroom bill or whatever they freaking call it. And it's the same with Schaefer, who's running for state senate, and he would probably be a huge vote on that issue, on the LGBTQ rights issue. But when he was on Ross Township Council, he's still on Ross Township Council.
He didn't even have the courage to show up for the vote?
He avoided the vote, but then during the debate that he had, he said, oh, no, I support this. But give me a break. I mean, it's not that hard to vote for a council thing that's basically redundant anyway. That's the kind of politics we have in the state in terms of LGBTQ protections.
The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, unsurprisingly, given what's happened to it in the last few years, has endorsed Scott Wagner. I always want to call him Scott Walker because of the Wisconsin governor.
Yeah. 2 peas in a pod.
Yeah, except Scott Walker's a better politician.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
He did win.
Yeah, he won, and he's running for his third term.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
There's no term limits, and he's running, and it's tight.
It's close, yeah.
Yeah. So Scott Wagner, if the polls can be believed, he doesn't have a chance.
Yeah, if the polls can be believed, which we should always couch it in that, and because polls are wrong often, and
if we didn't learn that a few years ago, then we're incapable of learning anything.
I will say, observing Scott Wagner's campaign, he kind of like has on paper like he could be a decent Republican candidate. He's a businessman. He's kind of brash. He's
self-made businessman.
Exactly. Yeah. In terms of the way he can sell himself. But anytime he really tried to cast himself more into the limelight and tried to get more attention, he ended up like basically putting a pie on his face. Right. Because he tried to cast himself in the limelight. He said really anti-LGBTQ statements, which just riled up probably a more liberal base, or probably even moderate Republicans that maybe wanted to support him. And then
it seems like
I don't know about that.
He's trying to be Trump-like. Every time he tries to be Trump-like, telling,
talking about
put a catcher's mask on because I'm going to be stamping all over your face.
Well, it comes off as extremely inauthentic, whereas Trump is very authentic with it. Yeah, and so it really works for a lot of voters. Wagner seems like he's trying to like
And
you know,
then,
I don't know, play Trump in a movie or something like that, and he's doing a really bad job.
And then when called out on it, does the most un-Trumpian thing, which is backpedal.
Yes, yes.
You know, Trump would say,
he has
hey,
backpedaled
babe.
many times.
Yeah, hey, babe, if you want to be Trump-like, you never apologize,
Yes.
you never
so
stand down.
In those aspects, it does feel very unlikely that Wagner will have enough crossover support that would beat who has become a popular incumbent governor.
Well, you say he has become a popular?
Well, yeah.
He seems sort of like a cipher-like character.
Well, I mean,
me,
in the you know, like 2 years ago when the polls were starting about Governor Wolf's approval rating, I think they were underwater to an extent, or at least not that many people had an opinion.
Well, because he's he's very blasé, very milk toasty.
Yeah. But as we've gotten closer to the election and as he's gotten more, attention, his approval rating is positive at this point, and so
that's good.
Yeah, I mean that's just what's happened.
So it says here, one of the little factoids I got from the City Paper edition you edited, that Tom Wolfe grew up in Mount Wolfe.
I didn't know that actually when I was editing it. I know.
He grew up in a town named after his family.
I did not fact check that. I mean, in terms of it being named after his family, I checked to see where he grew up.
I bet it. I don't. Somebody look that up.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, and you point out, and I think this is a riot. No matter what happens tomorrow, Pennsylvania's governor will be a millionaire from York County.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is bizarre.
It is pretty bizarre in terms of if you want to think about...
How many counties are there? There's a 70... no, I think there's 70.
Are there? I don't remember.
I was 100 million. I mean, there's just like this huge number of counties.
68 or something? I don't know.
And, and the two guys, two cis white males... running for the governor of the state, are both millionaires from one county.
Yeah,
that's odd.
And both businessmen. 67.
67.
Okay, all right, you were closer.
I was close, but I went over. So, on the Price is Right, I wouldn't have
won.
That's
stupid. I don't understand that. Is that if you're closer, you're closer.
67.
Yeah.
And both candidates are from the same county.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised that
odd.
Scott Wagner won the endorsement fairly easily from the Republican Party, because Mike Terzai was actually running for governor for a very short time. And,
I remember that.
Yeah, and also was Paul Mango, who is crazy. Yeah, there's just apparently he had a Gab account. That was just reported on today.
Paul Mango had a Gab account?
Yeah.
This was a guy who had wanted to be the Republican.
He was also from the Pittsburgh area. He's from Richland, up in
and
the
a
North
Gab
Hills.
account that means he was online on the same sort of hate. What would you call a Gab account?
It's a social media,
platform. Is that what they call it?
Platform, yes, but a lot of white nationalists and Nazis traffic on it.
And in fact, the killer here,
Robert Bowers.
I don't
alleged killer.
Fuck. And excuse me. And I have not uttered his name. The killer here was
a frequent
Gab.
person on Gab.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
And Gab was silenced for a while, but I read in the paper today it's back.
Yeah,
it's found a new.
I guess so.
Yeah, I guess there's no way to stop that
freedom
stuff.
of speech.
I always call it the pesky First Amendment.
It can be pesky at times.
Oh my God! So what are they? Every year, what's his name? It starts with a W. The elections chief here, Wolochek.
Oh yeah.
He predicts what voter turnout will be.
Oh,
have you seen his?
No,
no. I wonder what he's predicting. I have no idea.
I mean, I will say that turnout was up in the primary, and registration has been up huge across the board. Pennsylvania led the nation in youth voter registration by state.
Registration, though, is not voting.
Absolutely. But there are, I think a lot of, I think the Philadelphia Inquirer's done a lot of good reporting on absentee ballots, and which are really, really up in Pennsylvania too, which is actually really strange because we have very, 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 very strict absentee balloting rules.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
So, yeah,
no, I mean,
they're
like
extremely strict. So I mean, that's a lot of people that are like out of the state that are like, I want to vote in Pennsylvania. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see how many of those get rejected because again, they can easily get rejected because of our very, very strict voting rules.
Well, is that a kind of suppression, do you think?
Our very strict absentee ballot rules? Absolutely.
However, I was talking about that the other day, and one of you guys, one of the listeners, had a very interesting reaction. Said, "Well, yeah, but he's lived in other jurisdictions, and he says Pennsylvania has more voting places per. I mean, for the population. In other words,
there's so many."
It's unbelievable. Like within a 6-block area, there might be 2 separate.
Absolutely.
So that is not suppression.
No,
because we're seeing how, I mean, the infamous one, this election cycle seems to be Dodge City, right. Kansas,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So like
at the town of like 14,000 people, one voting place, and it's now been moved out of town.
Yeah, and it's also heavily Latino because of the farmers
exactly.
There. So yeah, but no, that is not the case in Pennsylvania. Especially if you live within the city, you do not. It's a block or 2.
You can walk. There is
and
no
so
way.
It's one of
you
those
can't
things
walk.
when I see like Lyft and Uber, they're like, "Look, we're going to give you drive to the polls." And like in Pennsylvania, like, why would you take an Uber? It's like 2 blocks away. Like
it's like
no
every your neighbor's house is your polling place. I mean, it is.
Mine's a car dealership.
Oh yeah.
So,
okay.
yeah.
Or it's like it's your bedroom. That's all. You don't even have to get out of bed. But that's odd, given this, so why would a state
I think that's
do
just
the
like, I think
absentee-
it's an old school, I think that's more of an urbanist kind of thing in Pennsylvania because like, for a long time the state was very walkable and was very dense. It was just a lot of dense towns. It was a lot of dense cities and towns. So they basically were just like, they just want you to be able to easily walk to your thing. Now, as we've spread out in Pittsburgh where we're becoming more suburban, you definitely can't walk if you live in Marshall, for example. Yes. So I think that's just a carryover. It's just like, it's something that hasn't been changed because it's just always been that way.
It probably is inefficient.
I would say. It's really hard
or
for the
more
county.
Expensive.
It's really hard for the
because you'd have
it's
to
really
have
hard
more...
to get. It's really hard for the county to get the volunteers. They've always had struggled getting enough volunteers. Yeah.
It's only old people. That I'm always amazed
have to work,
when I see.
Like who else can take a whole day off to
speaking
vote?
of that, I happened to be on Walnut Street the other day and walked into Patagonia, a store, and they had a sign on their door saying that they were going to be closed.
Yeah, actually
on election day.
Yeah, our one of our writers, Amanda, just I think it's only online, but wrote a story about all the businesses that actually close on election day as like a sign of like we want you to.
We want you to vote.
We want you to
vote.
We
want our employees to vote.
A citizen, yeah, and
you mean there's others? Do you know of others?
Yeah, actually, I haven't read that article yet. I think it was just posted recently, but I can pull it up.
Okay, pull it up.
Yeah.
And again, this country's nuts. We choose to vote on a weekday, limited hours, and like in a state that doesn't allow early vote. It makes it extremely difficult for some people, if not impossible, to vote. People who have to commute to and from their jobs, and by the time they get there and come home, the polls are closed on both ends. I mean, this really does happen. Makes me crazy. It doesn't matter.
No, I think it is an issue, actually, or at least we put it online.
Yeah,
I found it.
But I thought, wow, that Patagonia is that's a chain.
Yeah,
right?
It's a big company.
It's a big company, and
it looks like Dick's Sporting Goods offers. I don't know if they close, but
they offer their employees.
You can have time off to go vote, and without any which is actually a locally based national chain.
Shoot. Milton, my go-to guy in Columbus, Ohio, says this.
Okay.
Speculation that the town of Wolf, what is it? Wolf Mountain? Mount Wolf. Mount Wolf.
Wolf Mountain.
Wolf Mountain. Well, it's the same thing. Mount Wolf, Wolf Mountain. Wolf Mountain would have been better.
Yeah.
The speculation that the town was named for Pennsylvania Governor George Wolfe is far-fetched. The George Wolfe who served as governor in the 1830s had no relationship to the founding family, George H. Wolfe, who served as postmaster and station master in 1850. However, Mount Wolfe's George H. Wolfe did have a great-great-grandson, Thomas Wolfe,
Tom Wolfe,
who lives in George's house, oversees the Wolfe's business, and who had worked directly for a state governor. Okay, so wait.
Wait, hold on. So Tom Wolfe has a staffer named Thomas Wolfe?
No. So Tom Wolfe is the great-great-grandson, the governor. Isn't that what this is saying?
No, he's saying that
this is so badly written. This is from the Mount Wolfe Borough page. Could they be a little more clear? So it wasn't named...
George Wolfe, who was the governor, had no relationship to the founding family of Mount Wolfe, who was the postmaster station master. But that George H. Wolfe, who the town of Mount Wolfe was named after... where does that say that, though? It never says that. No, it says right here.
The town... No.
Mount Wolfe's George H. Wolfe did have a great-great-grandson, Thomas Wolfe.
No, it never... This is absolutely unclear.
Okay. I mean... I don't care. I was born in Hayward, California, if anyone wants to know, and I grew up in Fremont, California.
Okay,
none of which were named after me.
I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and actually in a little section called Alloway, which was named after a French Jesuit priest, Father Claude Alloway.
Okay.
Who... I guess founded Green Bay at in the 1600s.
Okay, wow.
It's weird.
That is. I didn't know it was that old.
Yeah,
but I guess you get there by ship.
That's right. No, yes.
Well,
because they were. No, they did.
Okay.
So they came down from Canada, and the French.
Don't you have to build
French
like a lock or something like that?
French fur traders.
Okay.
Were down there, and Green Bay is extremely old city.
Okay. I've never been. I have been to Wisconsin. Madison. It's beautiful.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
It's a great city. All right, we're getting off subject. So what do you think are the big issues here? You mentioned pot before. That's not a big issue. Although
for me it is.
Well, all right, Ryan. But for I mean, it's interesting in that I think in here you mentioned how much money could come in if we were to legalize recreational marijuana.
Yeah, the Auditor General.
It's like $500 million a year in revenue.
Yeah, a little over $500 million. I mean, that's also a conservative estimate. Our State Auditor General, Eugene D. Pasquale, who I believe is from Pittsburgh. He's been an advocate of this. He's been wanting us to pass it for a couple of years now.
He thinks it's a no-brainer in terms of just revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Lieutenant Governor candidate
John Fetterman.
John Fetterman is also a backer. There's a lot of backers in Pittsburgh. I mean, Jake Wheatley is a state house rep here in Pittsburgh, the Hill District, and some other areas. And he wrote a bill to introduce it. Basically, Ed Gainey's been behind it. It could bring in a lot of money. You're right. It's probably not the biggest issue, but in terms of like if we want to balance the budget easier, which is always an issue in our state, that could be one way to do it without raising taxes, without cutting back services.
A severance tax on the oil companies here. If you did both of those, you could actually begin to fund public education in ways that it has not been funded in ages.
And I would argue that the recreational marijuana issue would also spur private business. I mean, hugely. So it's a slam dunk unless you just really hate weed. But A lot of probably more pressing issues at this point. Would be.
I want to do the minimum.
Yeah, let's talk about
minimum wage.
Yeah.
Do you know Pennsylvania's minimum wage is $7.25?
Yeah, it's even lower if you worked in a tip industry.
Oh, that's true. But try to imagine living on that. It's impossible. Unless you want to live under a bridge.
Yeah, I mean,
it's impossible.
We even have low rents, but it's still.
It is the lowest minimum wage in the Northeast United States.
I think it's tied, but it's still the lowest with New Hampshire.
Okay,
perhaps.
But all the states around us have bigger minimum wages.
Even West Virginia.
Which, if you think about it, puts us at a serious disadvantage.
Yeah,
no?
And we have a problem growing our state's population. In terms of people wanting to move here.
We're not competitive.
No.
Stifles innovation, according to Dan Gilman. Hurts small business. Hurts the core of our communities, he says. So we haven't raised, Pennsylvania has not raised the, I guess it was raised to $7.25 in 2009.
And that's because the feds did it too.
Oh, and that's because the Fed. Okay,
yes.
So they're always going to meet the federal.
We did raise it to like $7.15, I think, like a year before that. But and then the Fed. And then
Don't
the feds
you
raised
spend
it.
that all in one place?
I will say there is bipartisan support to raise it. The Republicans want to raise it a lot lower. I think Scott Wagner said something around like 9 something. The governor, Tom Wolf,
is
Democrat,
going for $12
has
an
called
hour.
for 12, and a bill that I write about in this issue would increase it to $12 instantly, and then $15 an hour by 2024. So like incrementally after that. But there's a lot of proposals.
Yes, and you know what? I got to tell you, 15 by 2024. I keep reading that, in fact, wages are finally starting to tick up, but not enough to meet the inflation level, which is going up.
Yeah, which basically means that wages don't mean anything.
No, so $15 by 2024 is almost like $7.25 again. It ain't going to amount to much.
That's true, and so it seems like a pretty easy proposal. I mean, just in terms of like, I don't know. There's so much economic back and forth arguing about this, but I'm of the understanding that America is a consumerist country. So the more money you give to people, the more money they'll spend. So that you could argue it could improve business relations or improve the economy. But but this is an issue that is pretty cut and dry between Democrats and Republicans. So.
I know you don't care.
Okay, all right.
Clarification.
Okay.
Tom Wolf, our governor, is the great-great-grandson of the founder of Mount Wolf.
So it's his town.
It was named after
him.
Town.
Wow. Well,
the borough page has not been updated since before the current governor. That's why it says, so the current governor's great-great-great-grandmother was postmaster room. Yeah, okay, oh yeah.
Or is this Tom Wolf because it's spelled with an E? Are we talking about the author?
No,
Tom Wolf?
Milton just misspelled it. All right.
That's very interesting. So he's a true Pennsylvanian, I guess, if his family founded a town here. So
geez, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ryan, I'm gonna give you 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Whatever you wanna.
Okay.
I know you got stuff in your.
Yeah.
Every time I said Ryan's gonna be on the show, anybody who knows him said, "Oh, you won't get a word in edgewise. He just talks. He never shuts up. He's just talk." So.
Yeah, let's
do it. I thought we covered.
Yeah, pretty much everything. I would say. I would say I love to talk about gun control.
Go ahead.
There's been data that's actually showed that that's Democrats' biggest issue on a state level. That's what they care most about on a state level, state by state. This progressive data company called Data for Progress showed that recently, that in terms of polling.
You mean if you ask a Democrat in Pennsylvania what's your most important issue, they say gun control?
For all states. So if you ask a Democrat in any state what their biggest state level issue is, so what they want their state house to take on
is gun
control. So it's a pretty big one, and especially considering the mass shooting that happened at the Tree of Life Synagogue. I think it's really fresh on people's minds. I know that the people at the rallies, at the vigils, they were chanting vote.
Right.
And so again, this is this is a pretty cut and dry issue. Democrats, for the most part, especially urban and suburban Democrats, tend to support gun control, and the vast majority of Republicans do not.
Norma writes, amidst our grief, we can't forget we must still hold our congressman's feet to the fire when it comes to gun control. In particular, I implore everyone in the 14th District to contact Mike Doyle. Well, isn't he on the right side of reviving the ban of assault weapons? If the Democrats take the House, you mean in Washington tomorrow, I would think that Doyle, given his seniority, could yield a lot of power. That's possible. The best way we can honor the Tree of Life victims is to never, 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 never give up this fight.
I would say absolutely contact your congressman or congressperson as often as you can. But in terms of actually getting quicker a state like a gun control ban, it's through the state government, because Trump is in office until 2020. So, Doyle could, introduce 100 bills.
They'll be vetoed.
Exactly. Trump will veto all of them. So in terms of if Governor Wolf maintains his seat, which he's likely to do, and the Democrats were to have a little bit, even just a little bit more say in the state government, not even take the House, not even take the Senate, they might be able to push through a universal background check bill, which was already close to getting through.
What do you mean?
Committee.
We don't have a universal background check?
No. We don't have anything. We just passed we recently just passed a very tame bill that would cut off, domestic abusers would have to turn in their guns or something like that, which is pretty tame. But in terms of universal background checks, this year it actually came within one vote of clearing its committee, in the House, and it was actually because of 2 Democrats that actually voted against it.
That's what I wanted to say to you.
One of who's listed on here,
That's
Joseph
what
Petrarch.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
In this state, you not only have to get rid of the Republicans, you got to get rid of a whole bunch of Democrats who are essentially Republicans. I'm sorry, they really are.
In terms of a lot of issues, in terms of gun control, in terms of social issues, they're
abortion,
like
gun control, they are totally on the Republican side.
And so that's why it's really important to try to get as many, I guess, pro-gun control legislators into the
into the House. State House.
Into the State House, Harrisburg, and one of those obviously reelecting Governor Tom Wolf, Michelle Knoll out in Ohio Township, Moon area is pro gun control, and her opponent is more of a gun rights activist, and then obviously Emily Skopov, who is also pro gun control.
Oh, you guys and Marshall, if you could knock Turzai off or Metcalf off in God,
it would make a huge difference.
I would be the happiest human being in the universe. I swear to God. Yeah. Maybe for an hour or two. But I really, God, it would make such a difference.
It really would. In terms of seeing some bills that have been blocked for a while now.
All right. Well, Ryan, tomorrow. You going to vote first thing in the morning?
I think so. Usually the lines are a little longer, but usually I love voting. So I'm a nervous wreck, and I wake up at like 7 and I go down there and I just want to get it done. So I did that, in 2016. I couldn't even sleep. So
everybody today is talking about, do you think this will happen? Guys, we'll know in 24 hours we'll be voting, and then at 8 o'clock, 36 we should start knowing some stuff. If everything is as close as they say. Yeah. I would imagine in terms of national, we're not going to know a lot of stuff for days and days. There might be recounts.
Yeah, especially when you get down to California, which actually has a lot of, House seats, in Orange County and in the center of the state where they could flip. I just want to plug one thing. Can I plug one thing?
Of course.
Okay. Follow the City Paper account, on Twitter, at pghcitypaper.com. At pghcitypaper. On Tuesday, I'm going to be basically doing a live tweeting about all the results in our area, specific to our area. So it's kind of an original thing because most of the CNN, they're all going to focus on the federal government. I'm going to be looking at state races. I'm going to be looking at Connor Lamb's race, and
that's looking good. We didn't mention that.
That's true. That's like basically a shoe-in at this point. But we'll see.
Nothing's ever a show-in.
But man, that guy's such a crossover candidate. He gets so many people to vote for him.
Yeah.
That are that are conservative. So yes, but I will say that if you're very interested in the state races, that's what I'm going to be focusing on our.
You know what I was starting to think the other day about Conor Lamb. He's going to be somebody people are going to be floating for president.
Yeah, or Senate would be a big one in 2022, possibly. I know there's
up
actually.
Against,
I think there's probably 3 people that people have been kind of floating for Senate up against Toomey in 2022. Conor Lamb, John Fetterman, and my dark horse is Summer Lee, but she's only a state house candidate. But man, she can speak.
She's something else. A black woman winning in a white district.
Yes, and she is totally unapologetic, which is rare. So and she's very charismatic. So yeah, we'll see.
That's your woman.
That's who I think has got a little secret chance to kind of sneak up on people because Toomey he's got a lot of suburban support. So it could be hard for someone like Fetterman or Lamb to.
See, I don't think Fetterman's a good idea. He's just.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think he's kind of. Yeah, it's definitely seems like his star has fallen. Maybe I mean.
Oh, really? You think?
No, I wouldn't say fallen, but it seems like Lamb could overtake him.
Without a doubt.
Moderate kind of like
without a doubt,
or like I know rule support kind of people. So, Lamb is also incredibly charismatic too. So.
Although Fetterman is so frightening looking that he could just say, "Vote for me."
100%. Yeah.
Vote for me or else. Okay?
Yeah. And he's also been traveling across the whole state.
He
for
really
a long
has
time,
been all over the place.
I think there's probably a lot of support that he has as well. That doesn't really come across in polls.
Yeah. No, I think that's true too. Yeah. Thank you. You got a long day tomorrow.
All right.
And the day after, and the day after that too.
I have to say, I'm very much looking forward to getting back to just your
regular beat.
Yeah, transit reporting and some other stuff that I want to focus on. Some features I want to write. So it'll be nice after the midterms are over.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a really good. Pick it up. There's interesting stuff in there. It's free,
That's right.
So,
Thanks, Lynn.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I want to tell you about. Actually, I'll have Amy post it on my Facebook page as well. If you follow me on Twitter, I tweeted it out. For any of you who may have watched Real Time with Bill Maher on Saturday. At the beginning, he had on Barry Weiss, who is from Pittsburgh and writes for the New York Times, and she talked about what happened here. She herself was bat mitzvahed at Tree of Life. Her dad had been the president of one of the congregations that was attacked. The family is very, very intertwined in the Jewish community and looked up to in the Jewish community. Anyway, Barry Weiss, at the beginning of the show on Saturday, sat down for an 8-minute interview. And to me, it was a tutorial on anti-Semitism. And I would love it if you would all take time to read it. I'll make sure I get it up again, the entire thing. 8 minutes. So Amy's putting it up. Please, take the time. I learned things. And I'm an old Jew. Barry's a young Jew. I learned things from her on that interview that I had never realized before, and frankly, it's some seriously sobering stuff. And I just want to pass that one thing on to you. You'll recall that in Charlottesville, when the right-wingers, the white nationalists, were having their demonstration, which led to the death, of course, of a young woman, they were chanting, "Jews will not replace us." You remember that? Jews will not replace us. And it was reported on, and I mentioned it, and but I have to tell you, I never said to anybody, including a fellow Jew, what the hell does that mean? But that's what I was Jews will not replace us. It seems such an odd thing to say. Were they... I didn't understand what it was. Think of what? What did you think that meant? That Jews would what? Replace them? How? I mean, I really didn't get it. What was that? Barry Weiss explains it in that interview. They're not talking about a Jew, let's say, is going to replace me, this, white nationalist, in my job or in my whatever, each of us is going to be replaced by a Jew. No, what they mean, and this shows how insidious this anti-Semitism is, how bizarre it is. They think that Jews do control the world. That Jews are the puppet masters, controlling governments, controlling everything. And that one of the things that these Jews are doing, for instance, George Soros being a Jew, is financing, according to them, this caravan of brown people coming up here. What they mean when they say Jews will not replace us is that Jews are the puppet masters behind all of this immigration, all of these refugees, brown and black, pouring into white nations, Europe, North America. And Jews are doing that because then they somehow, I guess, make money off of it. So what they're saying when they're saying Jews will not replace us is the puppet master Jews who are trying to bring in all those brown and black people to take our jobs, that those Jews, they were defiant. You're not going to get me. So it's so much more insidious. And what Barry Weiss says that I had never realized before is she said, and she's right on, anti-Semitism, I don't know if she said this exactly, is gotta be the oldest, most just never going away conspiracy theory. That's what it is. It's a conspiracy theory that took hold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago and is always there. It is so old that there are people who just know that it's the truth. It's a conspiracy theory that is in the bones, in the heads, in the hearts of so many in the world's population, so that the conspiracy theory about the Jews running things is known and believed all over Africa, all over South America, all over Asia, Europe. There's not a continent where it's not known. So it's gotta be the most successful conspiracy theory. And it won't die. It won't. But if you can, please listen to her. You might not agree with everything she says, but I think what she said was just remarkably brilliant and eloquent. And she ended by talking to the Jews who support Trump. And I think she leveled them. She is a very strong supporter of Israel herself. And she points out that the Jews that do, and believe me, it's a minority of Jews that support Trump, do it because they like his, just total bromance with Netanyahu, his moving the embassy to Jerusalem, his taking things from Palestinians, and he's just totally in Israel's corner. And she said, yeah, okay. So you support him because of those policies. But look at the principles that you're giving up to support those policies. The principle, for instance, of truth. The principle of, and then she just lists so much of what any real American, any real believer of what Judaism teaches, or for that matter, what Christianity teaches, that you can't support Trump without devaluing and leaving behind the very principles that made this country, that are the basis of probably most religions. Anyway, that is a brilliant woman. One of our own. She's also written 2 incredible pieces for the Times about what happened at Tree of Life. The latest one was carried in the Week in Review section of the Sunday New York Times. Please, take the time. I found it sobering. I found it frightening. Because I never knew the answer to that question. Why? Even as a child, I would ask my parents, why do people hate us? And there are so many different strands. It's Christ killers, right? That's a biggie. It's that we're a small people in population, but we have a bigger profile than we're successful often. What is it? We punch above our weight, I guess. And that would breed, all kinds of suspicions and help sell conspiracy theories, I suppose. But this election tomorrow, to me, is when we take our first step toward either saving this country or seeing it go in a direction that no one of us could have contemplated, nor any president of the United States before this one could have contemplated. It is that serious. It is that consequential. It is that frightening. The soul and the future of our country is at stake. We have got to stop this in its tracks, or it will just continue to build. And we'll be ripped asunder, and more people will die. It's that serious, and if you don't think so, you're part of the problem. All right, tomorrow. And you can still help people get to the polls. You can still go work a phone bank. You can put out a sign saying vote. You can do something. Okay? We're in the battle for this country's life. And it won't end tomorrow, no matter what happens. All right. Peace. Shalom.
Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments. Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.